The pillar of cloud. Obsessed by the chimera of his mind, lost in the labyrinth of his imagination, man wanders on through the shadowy dreamland he himself has begotten, slothfully accepting or eagerly rejecting, but ever seeking some unobtainable freedom, some power which will release him from those shackles he has in his studied folly and capricious ignorance welded to his thoughts. Nothing contents him, nothing satisfies him. If he is not weeping, he is laughing. If he is not laughing, he is weeping. He grumbles and applauds, despises and reveres, insults and beslavers, loves and hates, fingers everything in turn. And when he has nothing further to soil and to thump-mark, sits down and cries to the moon, or else like the dog in the fable, seeing his own image in the river of his dreams, loses all he has in the vain attempt to grasp more. Slave to his own tyranny, shrieking under his own lash, the higher he builds the gloomy walls of his prison, the louder he howls liberty. Freedom is what he craves, yearns, and strives for. The freedom to leap into the miasmal bog and wallow. If he's a ploughman, he wants more fields to till. If he is a physician, he wishes more bodies to cure. If he's a priest, he wants more souls to save. If a soldier, more countries to conquer. If a lawyer, more wretches to hang. If he obtains more, he grumbles because it is too much. If he does not obtain, he continues to grunt and growl, and the more he growls and grunts, the more slavish he becomes, and yet the freer he considers himself. Once born, he is carefully swaddled. In the rags of custom, rocked on the cradle of the caste, and nursed with the sour milk of creed. And as with the individual, so with the nation, the one and the many, it is taught to work its way into the narrow grove, and like the water in a drain of a gutter to flow for a time unobtrusively between dignified cobbles or over respectable cement, and then to vanish as genteelly as possible underground. Sometimes there is a stoppage. Too much filth has accumulated, and it refuses all conventional methods of being removed. Then comes a flood, a revolution. For a time there is a nasty mess, but soon the filth is washed away, and once again the drainage flows humbly down its customary gutter, in the same old unobtrusive matter between the same old cobbles over the same old cement, until in time fresh filth stills up and there is more trouble and annoyance. So runs my dream. Uncivilized man dreaming from this drain naturally pictures God as a kind of omnipotent sewer-husher who everlastingly ought to trudge about the scoop, ladle, and rake, and keep gutters clean and drains in an inoffensive condition. So it happens when the gutters get blocked up and drains stink. The freethinker laughs and says, "You balmy fool, there is no such person." And when they don't, the believer cries, "My poor benighted brother, he's like refiner's fire and like fuller's scope." Compared to the civilized man, the water which flows down the drain, The savage is like a mountain torrent, cutting its own course amongst the hills and rushing on wildly yet wisely to the sea. No doubt, from the point of a sanitary engineer, the drain is more useful, more rational, altogether more proper than the wayward stream. But it is the rigid utilitarianism of this bread and water morality, this one shirt a week thrift, this skimmed milk philosophy, this cake on Sunday religion, and all the other halfpenny economies of a gluttonous mediocrity that must be trampled underfoot as if they were the cockroaches of hell before freedom or even a protoplasmic kind can be brought to life. Better a savage, a one-legged Hottentot, better be anything but a civilized eunuch, a crepe-capper, widow in upper tooting lamenting their demised husband, while she counts the halfpence he has left behind him in his trouser pockets. If there is to be a flood, let it be grand, typhoonic, torrential. Do not let others pass by us and say, "Really, my dear, what an insalubrious odour." The savage babe being born is taught to the myth of his tribe. That uncorrupted and beautiful enough, yet the civilized child gets the myths of the nation, that corrupted are merely bestial, and are as rigid as the former are elastic. The savage youth passes through one great ordeal, the struggle with nature. The civilized through a very other, the struggle with reason. The one is taught the hero tales of his forefathers, the other the platitudes of the schools, which luckily are always a few decades behind the ideas current at his birth. Few of us remember anything that happened during the first 2 years of our existence, and very little during the next 2. Thus it comes about that from 2 to 4 years of our life are blank. Perhaps these years of nothingness, we see things as they truly are. However, civilization touches us on the lips, and we speak and forget all of it. Directly we commence to chatter, our preparation to take life seriously begins. Books are given us, and the wide road of wonderment becomes narrowed to a straightened right-of-way path, which is a privilege and an honor to pass. If we are wild, it is naughty. If wanton, immoral, in innocence we lisp the 10 Commandments on our mother's knees, only to break them when we really know what they mean. Then comes manhood and its responsibility, marriage with its one pleasure and 40,000 plagues, as Heine says. Our birth is a matter of law or chance, equivalent symbols for the unknown. Once born, environment, circumstance, position, convention, education, all in their turn come forward to claim us and smother us with their bestial kisses. Yet like the streams and the gutters, the drains and the rivers, we all flow, roar, or trickle onwards to the same unknown sea from where we came. Sometimes evolution flouts ethics, and we have a flood, earthquakes, and the spouting of volcanoes. Sometimes ethics flouts evolution, and we are turned into artificial ponds and ornamental serpentines. Yet upon other times it hastens our cause and gives us a good old Dalton well to flow through. All of us, nevertheless, whether we be a teardrop or dead sea, sooner or later get back to the ever-rolling ocean. And there we shall once again be wooed by the bright beams of the sun, that relentless God, who his fierce embrace ever and ever again draws us up like some earthly concubine to his heavenly couch, only once more to be divorced by the malicious winds and weep through the storms of air. And so the wheel of time runs through birth, death, and rebirth, and as we realize this, we sink down in despair, and through our tears more clouds arise still further to obscure our path. What is the use, then, of doing anything, if we are but drops of water, which are splashed between the wanton hands of sun, wind, and the ocean? Indeed, the ways of God are inscrutable and past finding out. Thus the unobtainable tempts us, and the little segments of God that we see become to us the fiercest and most terrible of the dog-faced demons which seduce us from the path. He's always at our elbow, whispering, tempting, jeering, advising, and helping us. He is it that casts despair upon us when we have done nothing wrong, and elation when we have done nothing right. He it is who is ever rising before us like a mist to obscure our path, or to magnify our goal, yet nevertheless he is not only the cloud, but the ultimate fire. If we could only understand him as he is. Ah, my brothers, this is a great work. Why does he do this and that? If he can do that and this, asks the doubter. Because he chooses to, answers the believer. But the man after God's own heart thinks and reasons nothing. He feels there is neither doing or choosing, and dimly though it may be, he sees that both these foolish men, who think themselves so wise, possess but various little segments of a great circle, and that each imagines his segment a perfect circumference in itself. Presently, the mystic himself discovered that this circle, which contained all the segments, is but a segment of a greater circle, and that eventually he is living in a great clodland formed by myriads and myriads of little spheres, which he feels are in reality all one great ocean, if only he could make them unite. Each stage above him is his ultimate goal for the time being. Possessing one little sphere, his one and only object is to unite it to another, or another to it. Not two others, not the whole, only that one other. For the time being, let it appear as if we were for all the time to the initiate, that the one other is God, the very God, the omega of his quest, and that all others are devils that would tempt and seduce him. Thus it happens that until you become God, God himself in reality, the tempter, Satan, the prince of darkness, who, assuming the glittering robes of time and space, whispers in our ears, "Millions and millions and millions of eternities are as nothing to me. Then how canst thou little mote dancing in the beam of mine eye, hope to span me. Thus God at the outset comes to us, like the old witch in Cinderella, strews innumerable lentils before us to count. But begin, and soon you will find that you have left the kitchen of the world behind, and you have entered the enchanted palace beyond. It is all very difficult and complex at first, but rather like a man who, sitting out by a strange road to visit the capital of a country, comes to a great mountain and gazes up all but its endless slope. "It is too high for me to climb," the little man will say. "It is indeed very beautiful, but I will go back and find some other road." "I am sure it would be too long a journey," says a second. "I could not afford it. I too will return." "There are no guides here," says a third. "How foolish for me to attempt such a high peak." "I am not strong enough," says a fourth. "I have no chart. My business won't let me. My wife is against it." Thus God enters the heart of man in 1,000 forms, and tempts man as he tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden and Abraham in the land of Moriah. But the strong man, replenishing his wallet and filling his flask, girds a goatskin about him, and taking his staff sets forth on a great travel to the summit of the mountain of God, and curious to relate and terrible to tell, the whole length of that wizard way Satan follows behind him in the form of a sleuth hound, ever tempting him away from the right path. Now he is overcome by a great loneliness. He is cold, he is hungry, he thirsts. The skyline. He had thought the summit it is, but it's a ridge, and from it he sees ridge upon ridge in endless succession above him. On the toils, at the length it is the summit, no, but another ridge, and a myriad more. 1,000 fiends enter him, 1,000 little sleuth hounds that would tear him back, comfort, home, children, wife. Then he says it to himself, "What a fool I am." At this stage many turn back crawling into the valley of illusions of reason. How much more comfortable and interesting it is to read of mountain ascents than to actually accomplish them. These ones talk loudly and beat drums of their own valor to the ears of all men. At the next stage few return, most perish on the way back, for the higher you climb that great mountain, the more difficult it will be to return. Plod on, and when your legs tremble, give way under you, crawl. Crawl on all fours, and clench your teeth, and say, "I will." But on, and on, and on. And behind you tireless strides along the old greyhound, ever breathing false temptations upon you, filled with crafts and subtleties, and guiles, eager ever to lead you astray, ever ready to guide you back. And presently so great grows the loneliness of the mountain that his very companions become temptation to you. You feel a friendliness in resisting him, a burning hope that he will continue to tempt you, that his temptations and his mocking words are better than no words at all. This only happens far, far from the mountain slope. Some say not so far from the summit. But take heed, for there is a stage, and there is a great precipice, and those who look round for the hound may perchance stumble and fall, and the foot of that precipice is the valley from which they came. From here all is darkness, and there are no roads to guide the pilgrim, and the sleuth-hound can no longer be seen because of the shadows of the night which obscure all things. And how can one write further about these matters? For those who have been so far and returned, on account of the darkness, saw nothing. Therefore they have held their tongues. But there is an old parable which relates how the hound that had tempted the man the whole length of his perilous journey devoured him on the summit of that mystic mountain, and that the ancient dog was indeed God himself.